you know that in the Game of Thrones series, Daemon is actually the Night King? There are also many details in House of the Dragon that have long hinted at his identity as the Night King. Firstly, in the second season of House of the Dragon, Daemon had visions of the future. We all know that the timeline of House of the Dragon is 172 years ahead of that in Game of Thrones, yet at that time, the scene of Daenerys being reborn from the flames appeared in his vision. And at this moment, Daemon foresaw the future through the weirwood, indicating that he also possesses the same ability as the Night King to trace time. Secondly, in the book, when Daemon and Aemond had a fierce battle in Harrenhal, Daemon was defeated and fell into the God's Eye Lake along with his dragon. In Game of Thrones, the Night King fished out Daemon's dragon from the lake and successfully tamed it, using it as his weapon. Most importantly, he didn't fish out Daemon together, which is very likely because the Night King is actually Daemon. Finally, in the series, we can see that the Night King is not afraid of fire at all. This trait reminds us that the Targaryens are not harmed by dragon fire, so Daemon naturally wouldn't be afraid of fire either. These small details are enough to prove that the Night King has an inseparable connection with the Targaryen family, and perhaps Daemon is the important reason for the successful transformation into the Night King. Did you know? In Game of Thrones, Jon Snow is not Aegon Targaryen at all, and he has no right to inherit the Iron Throne. The drama tells us that Jon Snow's official identity is Aegon Targaryen, but in fact, the adaptation of the TV drama is the most unreasonable. First of all, those who have read the books have all heard the ancient family saying of the Targaryen family, the dragon has 3 heads. This actually tells us that Rhaegar had a total of 3 children at that time, and Rhaegar's first wife, Elia, had already given birth to 2 children for him, and one of the children was named Aegon. So as Rhaegar's 3rd child, Jon Snow couldn't possibly be named Aegon either. Secondly, Bran saw the real scene of Jon Snow's birth through the green sight. However, in the drama, no one calls Jon Snow Aegon, which shows that people have doubts about Jon Snow's true identity. From another perspective, Bran is also likely to be lying because after all, he is the only one who knows the truth of the matter. Finally, the real Aegon in the books has changed his name to Young Griff and dyed his hair, but his purple eyes can't deceive Tyrion's eyes. The real Aegon has actually been alive all the time, so the throne naturally belongs to the real Aegon. And Jon Snow is the least qualified to inherit the throne because he is the illegitimate son of Lyanna and Rhaegar. The fact that he didn't finally sit on the throne in the drama may be the best hint of the ending of the original work. Did you know? In Game of Thrones, the Hound's rebellion against the Lannisters was actually hinted at long ago because the Hound is never someone who uses violence casually. In the show, we all know that the Hound has an older brother named the Mountain, and both of them serve the Lannister family. But did you know the Hound is actually an unbeliever, so he doesn't have the consciousness of being loyal to any family at all. Maybe he thinks that he is not really a member of Joffrey's Kingsguard. Secondly, in the show, the Hound eventually abandoned his honorable cloak. When Joffrey publicly humiliated Sansa in front of the monarch he served, he handed his cloak to Sansa. Most importantly, during the Battle of the Blackwater, when the Hound chose to flee, he wanted to take Sansa with him and finally gave his white cloak to Sansa. This also implies that he doesn't care about his identity as a member of the Kingsguard at all. Finally, as we all know, the Hound is afraid of fire,
someplace that isn't burning.
And Cersei is the one who intends to create fire. She has hoarded a large amount of wildfire and wants to perish together with the enemies invading King's Landing. This is also a foreshadowing of the Hound leaving the Lannisters. Most importantly, unlike the Mountain, the Hound doesn't want to bully the weak in his heart, so he hates Joffrey's willful action. And the Hound also helped Arya on the way. From this, we can also see that the Hound's values are completely inconsistent with those of the Lannister family. Perhaps he joined the Lannister family just because he followed in his brother, the Mountain's footsteps. After rethinking his own life, he finally chose to become an ordinary person. Have you ever thought about what would happen if Catelyn in Game of Thrones knew Jon Snow's true identity? I suspect that Jon Snow wouldn't survive. In the show, we all know that Ned raised his sister's child as his own illegitimate son, which caused dissatisfaction from Lady Cat. But if Catelyn knew the truth, Jon Snow would have an even worse fate. Firstly, Catelyn is a very shrewd woman. As the eldest daughter of House Tully, she understands the ways of power very well. So Catelyn wouldn't keep this secret. Perhaps before Ned was killed, she would spread this news to King's Landing, thus causing chaos. She would take advantage of this secret and wouldn't care about Jon Snow's life or death. Secondly, Jon Snow's existence would make the inheritance of House Stark even more chaotic, so she would still dislike Jon Snow. Moreover, in the later stage, Jon Snow led everyone to fight against the White Walkers. Catelyn would definitely be wary of his abilities and wouldn't allow him to get involved in the affairs of the family. So Jon Snow might eventually have to go to the Wall and become a member of the Night's Watch. Finally, if Jon Snow's identity was exposed, he would first be hunted down by Robert. As a very paranoid person, Robert wouldn't allow anyone with a suspicious identity to be around him. Most importantly, Robert once had deep affection for Lyanna, and Jon Snow is the child of Lyanna and Rhaegar, which would likely make him even angrier. Besides the Baratheons, the Lannisters would definitely hunt down Jon Snow too. In this way, it would establish more enemies for House Stark. In the worst case scenario, Catelyn might not be able to escape death either, so Ned's approach was correct. He knew human nature well and saved a lot of trouble for both the family and Jon Snow. In Game of Thrones, why did Ramsay abuse Theon Greyjoy? In fact, it's all the fault of Rose Bolton. Firstly, Lastly, we all know that the sigil of House Bolton is the flayed man in red. Therefore, the Bolton family has always been used to solving problems through violent means, which must have had an impact on Ramsay's upbringing. So it's not at all surprising that Ramsay grew up with such a character. And the way Ramsay tortured Theon was actually something he learned from his family environment. Secondly, as a bastard, Ramsay needed to work even harder to prove his abilities. In contrast, Theon didn't have to make much effort to gain his father's approval. Moreover, Theon's status as the heir of the Iron Islands also held strategic value for House Bolton's campaign to conquer the Iron Islands. So Ramsay's torture of Theon was not just due to his cruel nature. Reducing the legitimate heir of a family to his own slave gave Ramsay a sense of accomplishment. Finally, apart from lacking paternal love, Ramsay also didn't have his mother's company, so he was always looking for playmates for himself. Regarding Theon as his playmate further filled the void in his heart. Compared with Jon Snow, Ramsay's situation was different. Ned Stark, as the king in the north, had no one daring to criticize his bastard. However, Ramsay, under the strong suppression of his father, gradually lost the last glimmer of hope for family affection. Did you know in Game of Thrones why Margaery was willing to become a pawn of her family? The biggest reason is actually her ambition to become the ruler of the family. In the show, Margaery perfectly embodies House Tyrell's motto, growing strong. So family honor is just a cover for her own ambition. She once told Littlefinger that she wanted to be the true queen, and the biggest difference between her and Sansa is that she will take the initiative to strive for it, even to the extent of snatching the title of queen from Sansa. Later, she also used her emotional intelligence to successfully win over two kings, Joffrey and Tommen. Secondly, House Tyrell has always cared about its family honor, and they are also good at expanding their family's influence through diplomatic means, and Margaery will certainly do the same. Looking back at Highgarden, although it is financially rich, its military strength is weak. If it were to fight against House Lannister, it would have no chance of winning. Like two of the richest families in Westeros, marriage is the best option. In the book, Olenna also wants to marry Sansa to Willis, the eldest son and heir of Highgarden, so as to gain control of the north. Finally, Loras, the most highly regarded member of House Tyrell, was tortured by the church, and Olenna never favored her son. Therefore, Margaery began to take on the responsibilities of the family. Having long been by Olenna's side, she also learned a lot of diplomatic skills, which helped her family fulfill her ambition. Did you know why are Varys and Littlefinger seen as the two sides of power? Because both are masters at manipulating the power of others. If we see the front side of power as serving the people and the backside as serving oneself, both built their influence from intelligence networks and excel at using information to confuse and control others. However, Varys on the front side seeks to maintain the balance of power, while Littlefinger on the backside thrives on creating chaos. First, regarding their motivations. In the show, Varys once told Ned Stark,
The realm, my lord.
that his loyalty lies with the people and ensuring a good ruler sits on the throne. This commitment is evident in his later allegiance to Daenerys. In contrast, Littlefinger has always paved his own path. He sparked the War of the Five Kings with a single dagger and indirectly caused Joffrey's death, all acts driven by his relentless pursuit of climbing the social ladder. The two are polar opposites for their purposes. Second, their endings reflect their approaches. Littlefinger rose to power by sowing chaos, but it was ultimately his undoing. When he tried to pit Sansa against Arya, the chaos he created consumed him. Varys, meanwhile, was executed for switching his loyalty to Jon Snow in the later stages, proving that both were felled by the very political scheming they mastered. Finally, their portrayals in the show illustrate the duality of power. It is neither extreme idealism nor meticulous egoism. Both approaches struggle to survive in the Game of Thrones. The real battle is one of human nature. Take Tyrion, for example. His ability to win people over stems from a lifetime of observing human nature due to his appearance and stature, which ultimately allowed him to survive until the end. What do you think?